Hello and welcome everyone to our quarterly Salesforce user group webinar. We're excited to be with all of you today to share what's new and exciting in the Salesforce Spring 18 release. Before we dive into introductions and the presentation, I have a couple of quick housekeeping items. First off, today's webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand after the live session. All attendees will receive a follow-up email from us with a link to access the presentation and the resources. We encourage you to share this with any Salesforce users or admins in your network. To ensure the best audio quality for all attendees, we have everyone on listen-only mode. If you have a question or a comment, please submit those in the question pane in the GoToWebinar control panel. We have a pretty full agenda today, but we promise to follow up after the webinar to answer any questions that are submitted. Very quickly, a brief introduction to Ledgeview Partners. We're a business and technology consulting company who partners with organizations to transform their sales, marketing, customer service, and operations processes. We take a process-first, technology-second approach to all of our projects, and we have an organization of certified experts who help scope, design, implement, and support our solutions, leveraging some of the most powerful pieces of business technology in the world, such as the Salesforce.com suite of products. My name is Rob Petrie. I'm on the sales team at Ledgeview Partners. I'm a Salesforce certified administrator, and I've been working with a variety of different tools, Salesforce products, for over 6 years. I'm excited to be joined today by a true subject matter expert, Ben Doler. Ben is a 6-time certified Salesforce professional with over a decade of experience with the tool. Together, we're excited to share some of our favorite features in the Spring 18 release, which went live for all organizations less than a month ago. With that, I'm going to pass the ball over to Ben to kick it off.
All right, thanks, Rob. So yes, today we've got an agenda here of topics we're going to cover that as we dug through the Spring 18 notes. We're going to look at some of the updates that came to Path over this last release, some changes that came with lead conversion, some things that happened with email enhancements in the system and outside of the system. We're also going to dive into how opportunity splits have been moved over into Lightning. And then lastly, we're going to cover what seems to be a hot topic for this release is personalized navigation in Lightning. And we see that sort of as a game changer from the Lightning design interface. So first, let's jump into the Path piece. So as you recall, if you've been to some of these webinars before or remember Lightning in its first iteration, Path was originally called Sales Path. And as soon as they saw that there was some expansion available to that and growth, they immediately abandoned the term sales and just updated it to the term Path. And they started rolling it out to other objects. Well, one of those pieces that was missing was cases. So that's been released in this the Spring release, as well as they realized there was an opportunity to not just utilize status and stages anymore for it, and really wanted to open that up for any pick list that you had. So they've expanded that to allow any pick lists that you want to choose in those objects and then leverage your path off of that. So as we get into some of those, we'll jump into a demo here that highlights a couple of these pieces. But essentially, from an admin standpoint, you don't just have to look for a status field any longer or a stage field. If you've got pick list values either in custom objects where you're leveraging Path or on leads or opportunities, accounts, those lists will now show up in that pick list option as you're configuring it. This really shines when it comes to like an account. Before you could just use the default field. So maybe you'd want to look at industry and an account or a rating field that maybe it was on account. Instead, if you want to start using a status field on accounts, we know that some customers don't like to use the leads object and instead do prospecting inside of accounts. Well, now you have the capability to do that and actually use your accounts object as your leads, where you can prospect accounts, go through a nurturing process, convert them into customers, maybe then get them all the way into a VIP status. So that can now be tracked through a path on an account object. Probably more importantly here, a feature that's been out in the success community now since Path was conceptualized and released in Lightning was the ability to do a path on cases. So that was always sort of held behind. They immediately released it for opportunities. They later rolled it out to leads and other custom objects, but they really didn't put any effort, they really didn't put any development into the case side. And there's more complexity that went along with that. Well, with Spring 18, they finally brought cases to the forefront with Path. So just as you have leads and opportunities, and you can have a path defined for how to get from one stage or status or whatever you decide at this point, from one spot to the next on those objects, you can also do that with cases, sort of providing a streamlined process for all your agents so they're handling cases in the same manner, so the customer experience is the same regardless of who that customer is talking to within your agent team. So for that, we've got a couple of pieces to show. So I'm going to jump over to our demo org here, and you'll see I'm already in the service app that we have set up. And if I go, first thing I want to touch on is cases, because that's the one that everyone seems to be asking about. And even as a release, the preview of the release notes route, that was a topic that seemed to come up pretty often. So if I jump into my cases and I go and look at one of my existing case items I have here, we now see that we've got the path option up at the top. And that can be expanded upon and have some of the same functionalities you do with leads and opportunities if you're already utilizing it there. You can have fields pulled out specific to that stage that you might be on, or whatever your path is designed around for a pick list. As you navigate through, you've got various fields you can focus on, as well as the same types of tips or guidance for success or other information that's over on the right to essentially let the agent know while we're going into these types of areas, this is the information we need to focus on, or these are the things we need to be thinking about while moving forward. So this really allows a more streamlined and granular focus on your cases and how your reps are handling those cases. And then alternatively, as we've talked about before, you can use custom pick lists. So coming back to that accounts example, if your organization doesn't use leads or hasn't focused on leads because of how they're arranged, and you instead wanted to focus more on, we have accounts that we want to go and prospect after, you can set up a path that's now focused on specific or custom pick lists within the object itself. So in this example, I created a custom pick list field just called account status. Now it's its own custom field, it's not a default field. Based off of that, I then created this process. I didn't add any tips or guidance for success. I just wanted to capture fields, so I left that off. But you can see that I can walk through this step and essentially be going through and changing my custom status value and still focusing on key fields that I want my users, maybe my sales reps, to be focused on capturing as they're working through this account that was really a prospect and getting them into a customer state, working them through into maybe an evangelist for our product, getting them into a VIP state, et cetera. So it really allows for more capabilities within the system to really manage your business how you need to manage it instead of changing your business to how the system works. So the next topic that I want to dive into here is lead conversion. So with prior to Spring 18, the lead convert process was rather simplified. There were still some advantages to how Classic handled lead conversion versus how Lightning handled it. Well, it seems that in Spring 18, when Salesforce went through and updated the lead conversion process, they expanded that to leapfrog what they've done in Classic, which is always good to see because now it has more motivation for us as a user base to want to use Lightning. So if you remember in Classic, there was a lot of requests for, I don't want to have to create an opportunity when my users convert a lead. And the way around that was usually to create a hack. You'd create a custom button that had some extra code in it that would essentially tick the box for don't create this opportunity. And that was put into place in a lot of places. A lot of customers did that because they couldn't hide the opportunity option, but they didn't want to have it set up to try to create one by default. They wanted that box checked because when they converted a lead, they just wanted to turn that into an account and contact and not necessarily always create an opportunity. Maybe that happened less often. Well, with Lightning, they set that functionality up from a configuration standpoint. So now when you go into the lead conversion settings, there's other options for selecting don't create an opportunity by default. So rather than having to put a hack into place, as you may have had to do in Classic, there's a configurable option for that. So that box is automatically ticked and ready to go so that you have the capability to create an opportunity, but it's not a requirement by the user. One other piece that they also added on that, as you'll see from that second checkbox, is completely hiding the opportunity option on a lead conversion. So if you're an organization where as you go through lead conversion, maybe you're not utilizing the opportunities object yet, and you're just doing conversions into accounts or existing accounts and existing contacts, you can completely hide that piece so that you don't have to worry about a sales rep or a marketing rep going through and converting a lead and accidentally creating an opportunity when it's not an object that you're prepared to handle from an organization standpoint within Salesforce. You can instead hide that completely so they only have the option to look at accounts and contacts and work within those two objects. And I also point out within this, in the lead conversion process that was in Classic, when doing a matching on account was rather limited. So you go through and convert a lead, and as long as the match had the account name had a fuzzy match, it would start to pull up lists of accounts. Lightning takes that a step further by allowing you to do a full raw search in the system. So by default, it'll go and try to use the same functionality. If there's an account that matches, account name that matches an account that's already in the system, it will try to go and find that and present it to you and say, do you mean this account? Should we be converting this lead into an existing account? But if it can't find one, it does have a full search capability that's over there on the right that allows you to go through and say, you know, I'm pretty sure this this company's in the system, but maybe it's named differently. I want to go through and start searching for it and just do a raw global search and try to find that account that I know it belongs under, even if the account names don't match or are named differently. So they really took that and enhanced it to allow better data quality. So you're not converting leads and ending up with duplicate accounts. Even though they might have different names, they really are at the same place or the same location. And a sales rep knew that, but didn't know that it was in the system. They now can just go through and start searching right on that conversion process, find the correct record, convert into it to keep your data clean. Okay, the next piece I want to touch on is the email enhancements. So there was actually a couple of pieces in email that were rather interesting, so I wanted to group those together. The ability to go through and search through emails was a big release in Salesforce. They changed that and started indexing some of the content within emails, so if you're trying to look for something specific, you can find it. And then also for the ability to just quickly spin up a new contact or lead from an email when you don't have them in the system. That has some good implications, especially from the rep side when you're using Lightning for Outlook. So we're going to dive into both of those here. So the searching within Salesforce really was quite a change. In the past, you could store emails, you could push them up into Salesforce. Maybe they came in from cases, from communications back and forth with a customer while there's an open case, but none of that information was available. You could search for the original information in the email because that was usually stored in the subject or the body if it was an email to case scenario, but all the following correspondence wasn't indexed. Well, that's all been changed now. That is all indexed within the system. They look at the BCC address, the CC, who it's from, the subject, the text body, not necessarily the HTML body, but the text body that's behind that. And that's all now indexed in global search. So if you know that something was discussed and it was part of the case, but it's not part of the case content itself, you can still search that out if it's in that email, as long as it's in the body of the email. Salesforce will pull that email message up, like the example we have here, and pull it up so you can go right into that subject, right into that email, and from there you can work your way backwards, because that's then linked to a case or linked to a contact or linked to an account or a lead, and you can work your way backwards to the top level record you need to get into to get the rest of the data to be able to do your job. So the second piece to this also is some of the enhancements that came with the email with being able to do a creation of new data. So if you recall from Classic, the thing that everyone seemed to despise was Quick Create. And the reason it was so vastly hated was because it didn't abide by validation rules, and it did not have abide by requirements on page layouts, and it had its own layout that you could not modify. So everyone would seem to go in and immediately turn that off because all it did was cause data quality issues in your system. Well, with a Lightning for Outlook plugin that ties into your Outlook client, they've sort of resurfaced that, but in the right way that was always intended. So when you open an email and you're viewing it and Salesforce connects through Lightning for Outlook and can't find a match, it will bring up this little piece that's over on the right that shows underneath people, this individual, in this case it was just the from name with Salesforce certification. It will bring up that from name and say, I can't find this, do you want to add this to Salesforce? Going in and clicking that button will bring up an option. Do I want to create this as a contact, a lead? If you have person accounts enabled, it will ask about that. And we'll bring up the page layout respective to your visibility and rights, but with all the requirements and validation rules running and set. So it really essentially is taking what used to be Quick Create and doing it correctly. It allows you to go in and immediately spin up and say, oh, this is somebody I've never talked to before. This is a lead that reached out to me directly because they found me on LinkedIn or they found me on some webinar that we did and I had my email on there. So they reached out to me and I don't have their contact information, but this is a lead. I want to turn this into a lead. You can do that with a couple of clicks, filling out just a few pieces of information and saving it, and it's published up to Salesforce with all the correct information you're supposed to have by abiding by all your company policy rules that you have set in the Salesforce system from validation and field requirements. So that really will help reps from a standpoint of if they're managing and working through email, they don't have to jump around. If they encounter this type of situation, they don't have to go into a web browser, go into leads, go in, create a new one, type it all in right from their application window, that Lightning for Outlook piece that's on the right. They can go in and do it all right there, run through the fields that are required right on that screen, hit save, it publishes it to Salesforce as change, and they can go on with working down their email list. All right, and the last piece that I'm going to talk about before turning over to Rob here is in regards to opportunity splits. So opportunity splits was a piece that was over the past couple of years since Lightning's release has sort of been thought about, and they try to figure out how they want to handle that in Lightning, and they haven't brought it forward. And with this new Spring 18 release, they finally brought it into the Lightning interface. So all the functionality that was there from Classic is now brought over into Lightning. The benefit here is that there's no additional setup that you have to do. If you're already leveraging opportunity splits in Classic, whether you're managing these splits from team members or you're managing them from an overlay standpoint, all that information is carried forward in Lightning. You don't have to go back and reconfigure anything. As soon as you go into Lightning and start playing around with it, it's there. The only catch is maybe an admin might have to go in and add those related lists onto the page layout if they weren't already there for some reason, or maybe they want to rearrange them within the Lightning app page to put them in a different location versus part of just the related list. But all of the data is there. Everything gets moved over. It's all ready to go. So if you're, if one of the reasons you were holding back on Lightning was because you heavily used opportunity splits with team selling and that wasn't available in Lightning yet, go ahead and hop over into Lightning, turn it on to play with it, start testing it out, because all that should be there and should be ready to go without any additional configuration. All right, so from here, I'm going to turn this section over to Rob, who I know is pretty pumped about talking about personalized nav and how that helps from a sales standpoint.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I am super excited to talk about this because it touches on a subject that's pretty near and dear to my heart, which is user adoption, something that a lot of organizations struggle with, especially new customers to any CRM like Salesforce. At a very high level, here's an overview of what's new with personalized navigation. Users can now add items to their nav menu in Lightning. That was a feature that was available in Classic, but now they've brought it up into Lightning, and it's much easier. It takes far fewer clicks, much simpler to use. It is no longer just for objects, so users can pin a specific report or a dashboard or even a specific lead or account record, as we'll show you in the demo. And then finally, users can reorder the tabs, rename any of the records or objects that they've pinned to the tabs. Just another thing that allows them to make the system more personalized for how they're using it. So we're going to dive right into the demo here. So we're going to take you over to our default sales page. This is our sales application. It's configured by our Salesforce admin. This is a stock layout that every sales user sees when he or she logs in. So let's say I'm an end user and I've been working with our marketing team on a number of different campaigns. I want to be able to keep track of their progress, kind of a specific use case that maybe my peers on the sales team don't necessarily need to see. So in this instance, I can navigate to the campaigns object. And if I want to pin it to the nav bar permanently, I can do so by hitting the drop down next to the menu title and selecting Add to Nav Bar. Now, every time I log into Salesforce, this is going to appear on the navigation bar. Now, in the past, users had the option in Classic to customize which tabs they saw. It took quite a bit more effort. It was a little hidden in the background, and they weren't able to pin specific records, only the objects themselves. So this is one of the huge improvements in Lightning. It takes it one step further. Using the same example as a sales user, let's say I'm working with marketing on a specific super promo campaign that I want to send to all of my target customers. So this campaign is going to run over the course of 1 to 2 weeks, and I want to be able to quickly check on the status for those couple of weeks without having to navigate. I now have the option to pin this specific super promo campaign to my nav bar by navigating to the record, going to the campaign dropdown, and selecting Open in New Tab. So at this point, it's pinned to the nav bar temporarily, which means it'll stay there so long as I'm logged in the sales app. If I want to pin it permanently or for the next week or two, then I'll select Add to the nav bar from the drop-down on that record, and there it is. Many of you may be thinking that this is similar to favorites, and it is, but it kind of takes the concept of favorites one step further. You can still favorite any records that you want to see in this drop-down, but those lists, it's a growing list, and as that functionality is rolled out, you'll notice that your favorites can accumulate pretty quickly. So this is a little bit different. It allows you to put something front of mind so that it's staring you in the face every time you log into the system. It's just one step more important to you, one step easier to navigate to. Going further with the customization, if the user wants to, they can rearrange the order of the tabs or change the displayed name of any of the pinned records by navigating to the pencil icon on the right. So why is this feature so important? Why am I so excited about it? As I mentioned, one of the challenges nearly every admin faces is user adoption. I think as admins, it's our job to look at Salesforce from a group or an organizational perspective. But at its core, Salesforce is a productivity tool that's designed to make the end user's jobs much simpler and to make them more productive. Personalized nav, it gives each user the ability to decide what's important to them, and that may vary from what's important to the rest of their team. They can then design the system to highlight those pages, records, and objects accordingly. So if there, for me as a seller, is a specific opportunity that's moving quickly at the end of the month, lots of conversations and emails, I can now pin it to my nav bar so that I can click to it in one click, and I can constantly be in the loop of what's going on. Similarly, from a customer service perspective, if there's a high priority case that my team is working on, or a particular report or dashboard that we just can't be without, I'm now empowered as an end user to say, hey, this is important to me, and I want it to be displayed front and center. As an admin, it's really, really tough to determine what's going to be important to sales teams, customer service teams, marketing teams. It's kind of a task that's impossible to complete. So this puts the power back into the hands of your end users. I really do think it's a game changer for user adoption. I would encourage anyone that finds this feature interesting to do a little bit more research on it, play around with it, and then communicate it to your end user teams. Let them know it's available, show them how to use this. I think you'll find a lot of end users are very, very satisfied with this, and again, it'll allow them to take the tool one step further to make them more productive. So to close out the webinar, we'll just highlight a couple of resources that we have available to you. For the release notes, there are over 400 pages that summarize all the new features and functionality. If you are flush with time and that is your cup of tea, you can navigate to that document here, take a look and dive in there. Probably a better way to go about this, if there's a specific feature we mentioned, you want to learn a little bit more about it, navigate to this web link and do a search. You should be able to find more technical details and information on how to set those up. With respect to Ledgeview, we are constantly trying to stay on top of what's relevant and what's new with respect to the tools and the processes that we're using and building. We do have a blog. Please subscribe to it. We try to stay on top of these relevant topics, release notes, challenges that our customers are telling us that they're facing. We also do webinars just like this. These user group webinars are quarterly, and we also do another group of webinars for relevant topics. And then case studies. So for all of our customers that we're working with, telling their story and sharing it with other businesses that are maybe facing similar problems. Conversely, Ben and I, we are not shy. We love to talk to you and we love to talk to our customers. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Our contact information is on this slide. In particular, if you have any questions related to Salesforce, maybe you're struggling with user adoption or you're kind of fighting the battle internally of when do we move to Lightning from Classic, please connect with us on LinkedIn. Feel free to shoot me a message or a note. You are not alone in that respect, and we are always happy to talk to you. It is the users and the customers and the people that we're working with that make our job so fun, and we're always happy to share what we know to try and help you solve the problems you face every day. And with that, we'd like to thank you for attending today. Please check us out on our website, ledgeviewpartners.com. We will respond to anybody who submitted questions in the questions pane, and we thank you for your time. Have a wonderful afternoon.